Welcome back to the Everyday Christian Podcast,
where we apply scripture. I'm sorry, guys. We haven't done this in so long.
I love it. You guys are getting a firsthand look at what we go through when we pre-record, because it's always either like he'll start us off and I'll mess it up, or vice versa. And it's so much fun that way. So, yeah.
Here we go. Take two.
Yeah, take two. You're listening to the Everyday Christian Podcast,
where we apply scriptural principles to everyday Christian lives. I'm Sean Sloggett.
And I'm John Rich. And today we've got a couple of things that we're obviously going to talk about. You'll have to bear with us. Please bear with us. I feel like I say this a lot. We're working on getting a new studio. We're actually in the center of our youth building right now. Things don't look the greatest that they could look, but we're working with what we have. I've also got a switcher on our cameras. No idea how the quality will be. Just bear with us if you're watching or listening on Facebook or YouTube. And we will obviously post that audio and hopefully video quality a little bit better later on.
A lot of new things are happening right now.
Yeah.
We have missed, I think we're like 3 or 4 months now worth of stuff that we've missed.
Yeah.
I don't know if Jonathan will apologize for it, but I will apologize that we've missed.
I'm not apologizing for nothing, bud. I'm kidding.
But we do apologize for that. There's been a lot going on in everybody's life.
Yeah.
Recently, just like everybody else's. But things have been going on. Obviously, we're trying new studios.
Yeah.
The furniture store has shut down. I'm sure a lot of people know that. Just a whole bunch of moving things going on. Brother, I'm not calling you brother.
That's all right.
Jonathan over here, this guy to my left.
Yeah.
My brother, my good brother, has had a lot going on with the youth group. So there's definitely been a lot going on. But we're back.
Yeah. Yeah. It's kind of crazy to think about, to be honest with you, that we are officially back. I'm kind of messing around here. I'm trying to make sure that everything is going smooth on this live. It very well may not be. And so if it's not, bear with me. So far, things seem to be okay. So we'll see how it goes. There's a lot of things that obviously have taken place over, the last couple of months. Tons of things have happened. A lot of things have taken place over the last 2 weeks. If you've lived under a rock or something, you probably have no idea what we're talking about. But obviously we're going to mention something about Charlie Kirk on this episode. We've shared some things about him so far, I think on my personal page, and then some on the podcast platform there. I'm never going to be hateful about it, but obviously there's going to be people that have opposing views about it. There's going to be people that disagree with some things that we say. There's people that disagree with things that he said. We understand all those things. But I feel it necessary to maybe talk a little bit about things that have been going on in society, things that have been going on in the world, which, by the way, if you're here right now listening to this, you were not taken up in the rapture that was supposed to happen today.
We've still got a few hours left.
We've still got a couple hours, at least in our time zone, we still have a couple of hours left. So who knows how that'll go down. But
it's almost 7. So we've got 5 hours before.
Yeah, we've got at least 5 hours.
We call them false prophets.
Yeah, and listen, we're not here to like jab fun at you. Maybe a little bit we are, but a lot of things have taken place. A lot of what I've heard people say, Sean, is a shift. Like that's a word I keep hearing a lot, which is really interesting because I've felt that same thing. Shift. I think Pastor preached to us a couple weeks ago, I think the Sunday after his murder, and the word that he used was shift. I was talking to a friend of mine a week afterwards, and they said, I feel a shift. And it's like things have changed in us spiritually. And I know, there's people of all different walks of life that listen to this podcast. There's people from all different walks of life that agree with things that we've said, that disagree strongly with things that we said. I don't really care about any of that anymore. Obviously, I have my own philosophies, my own life, my own biblical views. Obviously, Sean's trying to draw out the scriptures so that we can teach individuals on this podcast how to live a Christian life every single day. And with that comes a lot of scrutinization. With that comes a lot of individuals that hate us. I mean, I can tell you of times where we've had episodes, we've had people on the episodes that have threatened, that have literally attempted to hurt somebody because of episodes that we've released. We understand all that. We also understand that like we're kind of a small scale podcast. Like we're not big by any means. We get X amount of viewers and X amount of downloads every week. But in the grand scheme of things, I look at us and I'm like, we're not really big, but there are individuals that have been helped by this podcast. And over the last 6 months, I've dealt with a lot of deep depression and deep things that I've struggled with in my own mental walk. I know some of you are going to turn it off now because I said something about mental, but there have been a lot of mental struggles in my own life, Sean, that I've just I've dealt with and different things I've done to overcome those things. And obviously there's a lot of that. A lot of that is reasoning behind why we haven't really done an episode over the last 5 or 6 months, amongst different things, obviously. But I just can't, in good conscience, hold back anymore. It's like I can't, in good conscience, because I've thought about it. The last 5 months, I've thought, well, maybe we should quit it. Maybe we should stop. And honestly, that moment, I think a lot of people have felt this way, but at that moment that I saw the video, and I don't recommend anybody to go see the video, but the moment that I saw the video, it was like all of a sudden, at the moment I was furious, I was angry, I was emotional, I was sad, which we'll talk about that here in a moment because I've got some more to add to that. But I was really upset, and in an instant it was like God healed me. And I don't know why. I'm not saying that like this thing had to happen for God to heal me. Maybe it was my own blocks and obstacles, but it was like at that moment, I felt a release in my mind. And I thought to myself, I need to do more. I need to do more. I'm tired of sitting around doing nothing. I'm tired of sitting around doing the status quo or reaching a ceiling and then going back down. And so at the moment, that Wednesday that he was shot, I'm just sharing some of my testimony, and Sean, obviously interrupt me if I go too long or I say too much. But at the moment that he was shot, listen to the man for like 13 years, like since like 2015 or 2012 or something like that, 2013. He gets shot immediately. You see the video, you're like, he's gone. Like there's probably no way that he survives this, And all through that day, my question to God was, God, what do I do? God, what do I do? And little like sprinkled in throughout the last 5 months, I've been asking God that question. And he's been revealing little things to me here and there. And I'm thankful for that. It's like, even in my own hurt and depression and my own like mental battles, it's like God's been like sprinkling little things in. And so I've asked him that, and he's revealed some things to me that I'll hopefully share soon. But I asked those questions for the last 6 months. What do I do, God? What do I do? How do I do this? What do I do here? How do I fix this? The moment it shot, all through that Wednesday, God, what do I do? What do I do? All day Thursday, all I could think about was that this person who stood for conservative biblical values, which, by the way, conservatism I'm not saying everybody in conservatism is right, but I am saying that if you have biblical values, most of those values are going to align with conservative values. So here's a man who stands up for what's right. And almost every video I've seen of this dude for I don't know how many years, somewhere mixed in, there's something about Jesus.
I believe that the last question that he answered fully,
Yeah.
he was actually talking about Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
So it was the second to last question he ever received. So he was witnessing just mere seconds.
Yeah. Yeah.
Before. So I mean, yeah, absolutely. He's
Well,
always.
Yeah. Up until his point of death, he was doing that. And so all that thing's rushing in through my head. And I'm thinking, God, what do I do? Lord, what do I do? I'm just asking that question over and over and over again, all throughout the day. I just don't know why I'm asking it. I'm just like, God, what do I do? And some of you may have been asking that question, by the way. I think, I've heard of others say that, Lord, how can we step in? And, it's pretty crazy to see the amount of support that has come to Turning Point USA and how many people have tried to open chapters and stuff. And they've engaged in that. And I'm thankful for that. But I think that same thought process has went through people's mind of, Lord, what do I do? What more can I do? You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And so I'm asking him that all day Wednesday, all day Thursday. Friday rolls around. I'm asking him that all day Friday. And then I think his wife speaks Friday night. It was either Friday or Saturday. And she's up there talking, and like a little bit of like personal for me. I like to listen to things while I take a shower, So I'm in the shower listening to this lady give a pretty incredible speech. And of course, I'm in there like freaking out, like, God, what do I do? Like, it's amazing how God's working on my heart during this moment. And I'm listening to this really incredible speech, and I'm crying because I feel sorry for her, and I'm crying because I feel sorry for his family. And at the same time, it's like there's a call to action. There's something in me that's just stirring. And finally, I'm in the shower. My wife, I don't remember where she went, like Dollar General or something. So I'm alone. Thank God, because I just grab my hair and I say, God, what do I do? And it was as if lightning bolt struck my head. I've never quite felt this. The only time I've ever really experienced this is when I first was saved. And even then it was kind of stronger. I don't know why, by the way. But it was like a lightning bolt just touched my head, and it went all the way down to my toes. And I hear a voice in my mind, in my heart, whatever you want to call it. And it just yells back at me. I yell at God, and God yells back at me this: do anything. Do anything. So I'm like, I'm sitting there like shocked, And all of a sudden I feel that again, head to my toe, and it says, do anything. It's better than doing nothing. Of course, I'm bawling again. And I'm not trying to make, I could talk about Charlie Kirk all day. I could talk about his death all day. I'm not trying to make it about me. I know a lot of people are doing that. Your Candace Owens of the world. Don't get me started on that. Don't even start here.
I didn't say
I know what you're about to say over here. But even I know there's individuals that are trying to take this experience and make it about themselves. And in a weird way, in a really strange way, I think it's given people self-reflection, because it's given people the ability to look at a man who stood up for what was right, killed for what was right, and say, am I really doing enough? And God's just saying, do anything. Why have we become so comfortable with, if I go to church and I get inside of a building, that's when I can do something for God? And you can, by the way, you can do something for God in your church building. Why is Christ not a part of my conversation in everyday life? Why do I go to a gas station and fill up with gas and see someone who's struggling and not go up to that individual and say, it's because a couple things. Number one, it's because of my own laziness. And number two, it's because of the inconvenience that it causes me. We as Christians become so I'm so sorry. I got interrupted because brother, your dad, he says, I'm so proud of you, Jonathan. Always have been, always will be. And I'm pretty proud of the other guy that's there too. I thought he was saying something bad about you. That's so funny. But we get so caught up in our own time schedule. We get so caught up in, with me, like 6 a.m. I wake up and I pray and I read my Bible. I eat breakfast. 7 a.m. I clock into work. 4 p.m. I clock out of work. 4 to 5 p.m. I play with the kids. 5 to 7 p.m. I've got, Wednesday nights, it's usually I've got youth or whatever. 5 to 8 p.m. I've got youth. Tuesday nights, it's apparently podcast night. It's always something. It's like we are scheduling time to be away from our purpose. And that purpose is to share the gospel. You think about, I need you to step in here, man. I need you to back me up here. When you think
Amen.
when you think about purpose, we so many times we try to schedule things to where it negates that purpose in our life, or it takes away from those moments. And it's like, if you would just take 5 minutes to bring somebody water and say a prayer for them, or to preach Jesus, or tell them about Christ, like, what is that going to do to your schedule? It may mess up your schedule by 5 minutes, right? But I would much rather have 5 minutes messed up for God than I would 5 minutes of doing nothing. Or getting to a place where it's like, I got here on time and it turns out it didn't even matter. You ever done that before? You're like, I've got to get there early. My wife's like, you drive me nuts. I'm like, I got to get there at least 15 minutes early. And I get there 15 minutes early and they don't even start for 30 more minutes. I think that I know in myself, and I'm preaching, to the choir here, but I know in myself, there's more I could do. There's differences I can make. There's some hard lines that just can't be crossed anymore. There's some messages that I'll probably need to preach to our youth group that are biblical, but they're hurtful and hard. Because sometimes the truth hurts and sometimes the truth is hard. But I can't, in good conscience, do nothing, Sean. I can't good conscience do nothing.
We can't anymore. I believe it was, I don't even remember what I think it was Monday. The Monday after you had that Friday or Saturday that happened, I called you and we were just sitting there talking, and I was at work actually cleaning some buildings out, and we both just broke down in tears.
Yeah.
And started crying over the phone about just, what else can we do? What else? And I've, like you, when that happened, I was, man, is there anything I can do? Is there anything that I can, anything extra, I guess, was kind of my question.
Yeah.
And, I think of Charlie Kirk and the likes. I believe they had at the time of when all that went down, I believe they had about 3,200 chapters going on.
Yeah.
And I was like, man, I'll never mount to that. I'll never have anything of that capacity. Or is it possible? Maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know. But while I was questioning those kind of things, what my Sunday school class came to mind.
Yeah.
I was like, am I doing enough for my class? Am I studying enough? Am I praying enough for those kids? Obviously, the podcast came up. We've taken time off, and I was like, man, I was going to get pretty bold with it and say, even if Jonathan wasn't, I was going to try to figure out a way to do it. But thank God he decided he wanted to do it again too.
Finally stepped up.
But I mean, that drive is there. That shift that you're talking about it's definitely there.
Yeah.
You see it all around. There are those out there that are hurt by different things. And I understand that. We're not trying to negate all of that. But it's definitely time to stand up, take a stand for a lot of these things, and we've seen it happen.
Yeah,
We're seeing it happen. I've talked to multiple different people, and I'm, like you have different ones about different things that they want to do and be a part of. TPUSA,
yeah,
they wanted. I think it was about a year and a half ago or so. They asked Charlie Kirk where he wanted to get to, and he said,
Yeah.
"I want to get to 20,000 chapters."
right.
That was his goal. It was one of these days. He said, "I want to get to 20,000 chapters."
Yeah,
He was at 3,200, and to him, to hear that,
it's so hard to do it.
I'm sure for him that was a huge goal. That was something that was just seemed so far out of reach for him, and in his mind, 3,200. That's to go from that. You need to go, a 6 or 7 multiplier to get to that 20,000. What is there any way I'll ever get to 20,000? And he never got to see that. But over the last 2 weeks, there have been over 70,000 requests, if I remember right.
Yeah.
For new chapters.
Yeah. It's pretty crazy.
It's
I love
amazing.
this. Yeah.
And so, for me to sit here and like, what can I do? Is there anything extra? What else can I do?
Right.
And then to have that conversation with Jonathan of do anything.
Right.
That to me, that was okay. Well, when are we going to start the podcast back up? Because it's time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Tonight, I'm going to start praying for Sunday school for my class so I can be prepared for him Sunday. Not wait till the weekend gets here to try to be prepared for it.
Right.
Because I want them to learn. I want them to understand. I want to be biblical.
Yeah.
More want
effort.
This effort, and not that I don't put in effort, but you can always be better.
Yeah.
You can always do better. And when I say you, I'm talking about me.
Right.
I can always be better.
Yeah, I agree. You could always be better, but
yeah. Well, I was the one that wanted to start the podcast. So
that's so true. Hey, man, you got me here. You know what I'm saying? I love it because you probably saw me go across the screen. It's because these cameras, man, they will not stay. It's like they won't stay on. And I've got this cool switcher, and I'm getting used to it. Like I'm gonna be able to get it down pat to where it's just working just exponentially. Is that even a word? I don't know. But I agree. It's like there's obviously more things that we could do and continue to do to kind of push the limit a little bit. Like I think that we really just get comfortable, and it's like just push the limit. And my wife and I, we're just having a discussion here, by the way. I know some of you guys are like, what is this? Like, what is this podcast?
This is it.
Yeah, this is pretty much it. Like, we're just talking about any and all things from, a worldview or whatever, a political view. There's probably going to be a little bit more politics mixed in to this podcast. Bear with me. Wait, what did you do just now? The Everyday Christian mugs, still have those around. We have a warehouse full of them that if you want one.
Yeah, I made a bunch of them and nobody bought them. So
$20 to support. All proceeds go to Sean. I'm kidding. He looked at me. Anyway,
to the podcast.
There are a lot of things that are going on, obviously, right now. My wife and I were talking, and you've probably seen this too, but it's crazy how you start seeing it play out in real time, where that mentality of good being evil and evil being called good. It's just wild to me. Like, and we've seen it a lot, obviously. And I know what you're thinking. Like, well, this is not a left and a right thing. This is a Jesus thing versus evil thing. And I 100% agree with you. But like I mentioned at the beginning of this show, if you have biblical values, most of those are going to line up with a conservative political stance. They're not going to line up with a left-leaning stance. They're not going to line up with a left-leaning ideology. They're just not. And to say that they are, to me, is a gross misrepresentation of what the Bible, what the Word of God says. So I want you to think about that for a moment as I say the next thing. There are a lot of people on the other side of the aisle that are so wicked and vile and evil, which, by the way, I know, well, there's people on both sides of the aisle. Again, yes, I know that. I agree with that. There's people on the right side that are very wicked and evil and vile and all that too. When this dude was shot, the news cycle is crazy how much it's changing. This guy shot, which take away religion, take away political beliefs for a second. A man was shot because of words. You like how I switched the camera to you? A man. Anytime Sean does something embarrassing, like he's gonna pop a pimple or something, we're gonna switch it to him. A man was shot for words. And that should astonish some of you. That should, I wouldn't say scare some of you, but that should wake some of you up. A man was shot for words. And the left-leaning side of the aisle laughed and didn't care and said, good, he was speaking hate. And I wouldn't have pulled the bullet, but I'm glad for the person that did. How crazy and how messed up. Pulled the bullet, pulled the trigger. Sean, this is why I switch over to Sean, because he makes the faces and he corrects me. I've heard people say that though. I didn't pull the trigger, but I'm glad that somebody did. Shame. But not just shame, evil and wicked. And in the same 48-hour period, within a week's time, those same people freaked out because ABC canceled Jimmy Kimmel's show. And they said, well, they're taking away our freedom of speech. And I literally had people say, if you compare the two, really, Jimmy Kimmel's show being canceled was worse than Charlie Kirk being murdered. I cannot stand it. It aggravates me. You guys are going to see aggravated John Rich in this podcast. I'm so mad about that because it's wrong to say that someone who had, I think between the age range, you'll have to fact check me on this, but people within my age range, I think it was 20 to 35 a night, had 250,000 viewers. And you're going to tell me that he was fired because of freedom of speech. You can argue that with me all day, but he probably should have been fired 10 years ago. But for someone to tell me that an individual deserved to be shot because of they really can only come up with 3 or 4 things that they disagree with, and they spew those all over and reiterate those. I'm not saying I agree with everything Charlie Kirk said. I've agreed with a lot less things that Joe Biden or Kamala Harris have said. But not one time have I ever thought to myself, I wish somebody would pull the trigger and kill them. But then to think that this happening is a good thing. And some of you are going to disagree with that. I simply don't care. But for you to think that Jimmy Kimmel's show being canceled, which it's supposed to be back on tonight, is worse than Charlie Kirk's murder. We are seeing in real time evil being called good and good being called evil. And I don't know about you, but it's time to take a stand. Yep. It's time to stand against those things. I am tired, Brother Sean. I told you buckle up. I am tired of the church world saying we don't need to be involved in politics. I'm tired of that mentality. I'm tired of the mentality that says we don't need to preach politics from behind the pulpit. Now, listen to me. I am not saying get up behind the pulpit and tell your congregation to vote for Donald Trump. And if you don't, you're not just not only not a red-blooded American, but you're not a red-blooded Christian. I'm not saying any of those things. What I am saying is to believe or to pretend that issues such as abortion, that we believe God gives life and God is, wants us to be pro-life, for us to say that and then to also say, I don't want to have anything to do with politics is an oxymoron, because those things go hand in hand. To say, I want there to be legislation that protects the sanctity of marriage, and then to say, I don't want to be involved in politics, I'm sorry, I have a problem with that. Sean, again, I talked to you about this before. You may completely disagree with me, and that's totally fine. I just have a problem with that, though. To sit up here and tell me that you believe that God created one man and one woman, two genders, and then not to vote against statewide legislation to get rid of that mentality and that ideology. Well, evil's getting bad. Evil's getting bad, but that doesn't mean we do nothing. Evil's getting worse. Evil's getting worse. That doesn't mean we do nothing. Yep. I can't. You cannot tell me that the church cannot be involved in politics anymore. Again, going back to it, I'm not saying tell everyone and their mother who to vote for. I'm not saying any of those things. What I am saying is, you've got to get engaged in your community. You've got to get engaged in protesting. You've got to get engaged in standing outside abortion clinics with sonograms to help women make the right choice. I think too many times, and obviously you guys know our background, Pentecostal holiness background, and we want to say, we've mentioned this so many times, Sean, on this podcast, but you know what? We haven't been here for 5 months, so maybe you guys have forgotten. But we want to speak out against Catholicism and say the things that they believe are just detrimental to the faith, or all these, random things. Their doctrines are way off. And I don't agree with most of Catholicism, by the way. There's some things I do agree with. But for me to say, speak out against this, but I also don't like abortion, when they're the reasons why, one of the main reasons why, rather, Roe versus Wade was overturned, Brother Sean. Sorry, I'm talking too much. You got to talk for me.
No, you're fine. I think at one point, and I think 4 of the Supreme Court justices, when that was overturned, 4 or 5 almost. I don't remember now. Yeah, they were practicing Catholics.
Yeah.
They were the ones that got in, and I don't remember the exact numbers on it either. But the Catholic Church almost single-handedly, if you go look at the statistics and the funding and all that stuff, was the reason that it was overturned. I mean, they were dumping money into it, into pro-life organizations, for years, and they have been for a long time. And, like we've talked about this some, me and you and others. It's, do I agree with the Catholics? Like you said, not on very much, but I can get on board with that for sure.
Yeah.
There's definitely a lot of things that other denominations, churches believe that I don't believe, and that, we may see some of it, we'll see eye to eye, some of it we won't. But I have always tried to be a more open-minded towards that kind of things. I don't care.
Yeah.
Are you following the Bible the best you can?
Right.
Good.
Yeah.
Are you trying to get to heaven? Good. Are you taking people with you?
Yeah.
Great.
Right.
I'll sit down, I'll debate, we can talk about differing points of view.
Yeah.
But more and more, I'm getting to the point now where I don't, not that I wasn't before, but I mean, we're trying.
Yeah.
You're trying. Let's get together. Let's do something.
Yeah.
Perfect example. Peanut Butter and Jesus.
Yeah.
It's there's several ministries all around. Here in Creek County, they do one. I went and helped a couple weeks ago, and if I'm not mistaken, I think there was a Pentecostal holiness. I know there was some Pentecostal holiness people there, but there was also some oneness UPC there. And like, well, I mean, we can't have anything to do with the UPC because they don't believe in the Trinity and all these things. I get it. There's a lot of false doctrine. And
Right.
I don't care. There's false doctrine there.
Yeah.
Oh
man, we're gonna lose all our UPC followers.
Sorry,
that was the one. That was
we
it.
can talk about it later.
Yeah.
Again, there's things we don't disagree with, but they decided, hey, there are some hurting people in Creek County that need some help.
Yeah.
And I'm sure if you'd asked that gentleman, he probably would have said that we had a lot of things wrong because obviously he doesn't believe the way that we do. He'd have told you there was a lot of things that we had messed up.
Yeah.
But guess what? We sat side by side. We got to talk to some people. We got to witness to some people. We got to give some kids some food that probably hadn't eaten that week.
Yeah.
Some of them, I almost would guarantee you that, because when I walked up to them and I asked them how much they needed, they were like, is there any way we can have 7 sandwiches?
Yeah.
Just me thinking here, there's 7 days in the week.
You're right.
That happened 3 or 4 different times. Could have been a coincidence and there was 7 people in the household, sure. But I've heard stories of those ones that said this is the only meal we get.
Yeah.
I've heard those stories. And what is it going to take?
Right.
And I hate that it happened.
Yeah.
To Charlie Kirk.
Yeah.
I do.
Yeah.
I've listened to him for probably not as long as you have, but I've listened to him for a long time. But people are finally starting to realize and to see it.
Yeah.
And there's videos out there. I saw one, it's been a while back, and I'm actually started watching a lot of their videos. This one lady said that she hadn't been to church in years because of certain things that were going on.
Yeah.
Some church hurt. And that's a very real problem.
Right.
Very serious, very real problem.
Right.
And she had struggles in her life. Some of it she'd kind of mentioned. And you could, just by looking at her and watching some of her videos, she looked like somebody that was liberal.
Yeah.
I don't know that for sure. I'm just from looking at her and watching her videos, she seemed to look that way. But you can tell she was a thinker. And she started breaking stuff down and really diagnosing and analyzing. And then she went to church on a Sunday. And that Sunday afternoon, she made a video. And she's like, well, I guess this is take 50 something. She said, because I can't get through this without crying.
Yeah.
And
right.
And she said, I walked into church this morning for the first time in how many ever years. And she said, I was greeted.
Yeah.
And I'm going to be honest, this hit me right between the eyes.
Oh, yeah.
She said, I was greeted with open arms.
Yeah. Which.
And then she said, physically, I was greeted with open arms.
Mm.
She said, I know the church. I know enough about them. They're always will welcome you with open arms. You hear churches say stuff like that.
Right.
She said, there were people that I hadn't seen in a long time. People that knew me. She said, I walked into that door and they ran to the back. and opened their arms and hugged me and
Yeah.
told me they were thankful that I was back at church. She said I was literally, and she's just crying her eyes out when she's saying this.
Yeah.
She said I was literally accepted back into the church with open arms. I'm watching that on a Sunday afternoon, and I'm like, dear God.
Yeah.
Do they feel that way about me?
Yeah.
I'm not much of a hugger, but if I see somebody walk in the church,
Right.
am I going to stay in my pew?
Right.
Again, you're talking about taking 5 minutes out of your day. Song service is going on. Do I have to be so prim and proper that I can't disrupt service to get out of my pew, walk towards the back? Hey, brother.
Yeah.
My name's Sean. It's good to have you this evening. What's your name?
Yeah. Right.
It's not that hard. Will a few people look at me and be like, dude, what's Sean doing? Probably.
Yeah.
I don't care.
Right.
Like, I've watched this lady, and just in this last couple weeks, like, you can see again that shift, that change.
Yeah.
And it's challenged me a lot. And just, I don't know. Yeah.
Well, like you said, it just yes, it's changed. And I think a lot of people have felt the same way. It's like, what we talked about, like, what can we do more of? And then it's also like a self-evaluation, like what can I do better? And I think that is, we could talk all day about like what I need to do as a part of the church and what the church needs to be as a whole, and where they need to go from here kind of mentality. But, really, I think that just the self-evaluation of a church, think about things that's going on in your church. Like, are you making a difference in your community?
And I keep,
what I mean?
Yeah. I keep talking about the church, and I guess it's because it's kind of where I'm comfortable, and I have to work on myself.
Sure.
I've got my Sunday school class that I teach, but I don't want it to be about just my church.
Yeah.
I want it to be about the peanut butter and Jesus.
Right.
I want it to be about the Macy's cradle.
Yeah.
I want it to be about these things that are outside. Because there are those that will come back to church, just like that young lady. There are those that will feel the need to be drawn back to church. But what about the ones that don't?
Yeah.
What about the ones that are still hurt?
Yeah. For sure.
The ones that maybe did feel a little bit of something about this.
Yeah.
But things were so bad that they don't feel like they can go back. Why can't I be the one at the gas station like you talked about?
Right.
Why can't I be that guy? And when we're playing cornhole, you're like, hey, I talked to a guy last night, told him we were evangelists, traveled around and preached, and he had some questions about it. How hard is that? We're standing side by side for 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And man, that self-reflection is, it's been huge this last couple of weeks. And I've had to challenge myself. What I was saying was I've had to challenge myself that I've got to get outside of the church, built the four walls.
Yeah.
It's great, but I've got to get outside of it more.
Yeah. Well, again, it just kind of goes back to like what we've been talking about is like, how do I incorporate Christ in everything? And it is a conscious effort. Like, I know, some people it's secondhand nature, and some people it's not. And the reason why it's not is because, something that's secondhand nature is because practice makes perfect. We have to make it up in our mind that like every day When I get out, when I go to work, when I'm trying to help out at church, whatever it is, when I'm going to the store, what can I do to incorporate Christ in my language, in my actions? What can I do to incorporate Christ? Something that you had mentioned, and I do want to mention this too, because I've thought a lot about this too. I think he was just on here, and maybe he's still listening to me. He's not, that's fine. But I think it was your dad that preached about, you got to give me the title, man. Is it like Hillary Clinton something in Y2K? I think Hillary Clinton.
What is Al Gore Y2K? Hillary Clinton. Fear of God.
Yes.
Have in common. They all make people pray.
Yes, and I've thought about a lot of that. Not just that sermon, but I've thought about a lot about that mentality, something because like
that's not right, but it's something like that. Yeah.
You'll have to get on there and comment again here, Brother Todd. But I've thought a lot about that because you think about like 9/11 was huge, and people were driven to church out of that fear, that fear of like, wanting to get close to God because of fear for the life, fear for the country, etc. And I felt, again, like, comment below if you feel differently, or if you feel like, maybe there's a different explanation to it, or whatever you want to call it. But I have felt like this, at this moment, this thing that has happened has drawn people to Christ, not out of fear, but out of faith, which is something completely different. When you're drawn to Christ because you fear what he'll do to you, eventually you'll probably leave Christ when he doesn't do anything to you. And I'm sure that we found, I don't know what the numbers are, by the way, the statistics. I probably could have looked those up. But I'm sure a few months after 9/11, a few years after 9/11, people slowly, more and more, started drifting away from the church, or drifting away from God, etc. In this moment, what I've noticed is people are coming to God in faith and saying, I don't know what it is, but something is drawing me.
Yeah.
And they're saying, I'm going to read my Bible out of faith. I'm going to pray out of faith. Now, don't get me wrong. Going to church, praying, and read your Bible are all good things, but none of those things will get you to heaven. I have heard individuals say, I've dedicated my life to Christ. I've rededicated my life to Christ. I've gotten saved. I'm backslidden. I was resaved, whatever. I know those things, all four of those things are the same thing. But I've noticed that people are beginning to come to Christ in this moment because I can't think of another thing to call it except the Spirit's drawing. And I don't know why. I don't think the rapture is going to occur within the next 4 hours. Maybe it will. I don't think it's going to occur tomorrow. My brother's birthday's tomorrow. I don't have to buy him a present. So we'll see if it does happen.
You might luck out.
I might luck out, Jordan, if you're watching this. But people are coming to God in faith. And that's a whole different, I was reading in the Bible. I don't know how much time we've got. We're 48 minutes in. I was reading the Bible the other day, and it was Jesus. It was talking about Jesus, and I think it was like John chapter 3 or 4 or something like that. And Jesus was doing all these miraculous things. It was right after John chapter 2 when he performed the wedding in Cana, and performed the miracle at the wedding in Cana. And he was doing all these. He performed the wedding.
I need to go back and reread that. I missed that one.
Yeah. He married a couple. It was cool. But anyway, he performed a miracle at the wedding of Cana. And he did. The Bible says it didn't record everything that he did, but it said he did all these miracles. And then there was a crowd of people that wanted to follow him. And the Bible says that he drew himself away from that crowd of people because he knew what their hearts were saying, or he knew how their hearts were. He knew how they were being. And what he was what the scripture says when when John wrote that, he's saying these people are coming to God because they see power and they see works and they see miracles instead of coming to God in faith. And he drew himself away from that crowd. And there's always going to be that crowd, by the way. There's always going to be the crowd that says, if I see X, Y, Z, I'll believe. And there's always going to be the crowd that says, because of fear I have over this, that, or the other, I'm going to believe. But there has to be, and you have to make it up in your heart if you're listening to this, that I'm not going to God because I have seen X, Y, Z, or because I'm afraid of this or that or the other. I'm going to God because I believe in God, even if I don't see his hand move over here. That's faith. That's coming to God regardless of everything else. That's believing in God regardless of everything else. We've said it a million times on the show. Oh, great. My camera went out. We've said it a million times on the show. We're just going to have Sean play the whole time. We've said it a million times on this show, but oh man, it worked. That's incredible. We're going to get this live thing down, I promise. Cool. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Okay. Perfect examples of that. Because they're in the middle of a trial.
Even if
they're in the middle of King Nebuchadnezzar telling them, in the midst of all these people that are bowing, I think it's only camera 1 and 3 working, but it's fine.
Hit them in the middle of
I told you every time, dude. Popping pimples, playing with your beard, taking a drink. I'm going to put the camera on you. Which, by the way, I noticed that it keeps putting a square on your face too with oh man, if you're listening on audio, you have no idea what's going on, and this is the funniest thing ever. I love this thing. But in the middle of all these people that are bowing before this idol, when the music plays, King Nebuchadnezzar's like, you three have to bow, or I'm going to throw you into the fiery furnace, and we're going to make it hotter than what it is.
Where'd you go to school at?
Huh? 3.
Said,
you 3. You 4.
I mean,
because you know what? There was. Come on now.
He said, you 3 are fixing to go in. He was prophesying.
Oh my
King
goodness.
Nebuchadnezzar didn't even know it, but he was prophesying. He
Yeah,
said,
you didn't even know it, but my homeschool math abilities here are showing. You 3 are going to have to bow there, else I'll throw you into the fire. And they say, well, you know what? Here's what they say. If God shows himself, then we'll believe. If God proves himself and stops the fire from even turning on, then we'll believe. They don't say that. They say, we're not going to bow. And even if God doesn't deliver us, we're still not going to bow. That's faith. And when it comes to the God and when it comes to the things of God, we always want to say, God, if you do this, I'll believe. God, if you go down to the middle of Mississippi and save my great grandma's cat, I'll believe. But that's not faith. Faith is believing even when God hasn't moved. Faith is believing even when God says no. Faith is believing even when God shuts a door, because he has all things in his hand. All things are working out for his good. And I'm going to believe in him regardless of, or whether or not, rather, he answers a prayer that I have or answers a need. I believe, because that's what faith is, Brother Sean. That's what faith is. Look at me. Is that the end of our episode?
I'm struggling with this.
I know, the whole setup.
There's cameras, and I'm trying to look at the camera.
That's your camera.
He won't even put it on me now.
That's your camera. Now I won't put it on you. Well, it's black over here, so we've got the.
But there's a screen right beside it, so I'm looking at the screen, and then I realize I got to get back to the camera, and then Jonathan's over here. You
guys and girls are getting the full everyday.
You
Christian
guys are getting the real me
effect.
I am not the just the proper. I'm the goofball. I am the weird, funny one. But yes, Scripture bears out,
Yeah.
what you said. Now faith is the substance of
Right.
things hoped for,
Right.
the evidence of things not seen.
Yeah.
Even if we don't see it,
Yeah.
even if that it's still, we still believe.
Yeah.
Me and a couple guys were talking last night about atheists
Mm.
and evolution, things like that, and this comment's been made before. It wasn't that I said anything new, but I said, as an atheist, you've got a lot more faith than I do as a Christian. You're not quick enough.
I am so slow, I swear.
Because, my faith as a Christian, every once in a while, I get to see something happen that helps prove it.
Yeah.
Atheism is all based on bang, it happened.
Right. Yeah.
Well, can you prove it? We got a bunch of theories.
Yeah.
No, can you prove it?
Exactly.
Nope. You've had faith for the last 250 million years. You got way more faith than I do, bro.
Right.
But yeah, I'm done. So I think we're at the
awesome.
end.
Yeah, this is again very impromptu. Like I think I told Sean
it was that Monday or whenever that we talked.
Yeah, so just a little over a week ago, I was like, let's go. We got to do this again. It's going to look different. You guys have to bear with us. I swear. I feel like I say that every time, but it's like,
don't swear.
Yeah, I'm not going to swear. There's always something going on, always something changing.
Y'all got that on record.
You guys have that on record. I'll have to cancel this live video. We very thankful.
Jonathan, the Everyday Christian Podcast.
Don't do it. Very thankful for everyone who's listened to this episode. Really appreciate everyone who stuck with us. I've had people that have reached out, said, hey, when are you guys going to release a new episode? What's that looking like? I've had people give us testimony about episodes we've done, little things that I think God has used to draw us back to it. And we're still figuring things out. Probably going to switch up some sayings, switch up our the way we do it, switch up where we post it, switch up logos. We're going to do a lot of changes. We're probably going to do a little bit of changes on how we actually do the podcast. Notice how we've got 3 camera angles, and we're not sitting like we're in some sort of a news conference room or something. This isn't even going to be our studio, so whatever. But very, very thankful for everyone who's tuned in. You know where to find us. I think it's on Apple Podcasts as well as Google Podcasts. But if you search at Podcast for Him or Podcast the number for Him, you're going to find us on the podcast platform of your choice. Obviously, you can search us on here at Facebook or Instagram, the Everyday Christian Podcast. Every and day are what, Sean? Two separate words.
I don't know why he's got numbers and everything. Every and day are 2 separate words. Podcast number for him.
Yeah. At least I didn't say podcast for him. At least I didn't hold up a 5 this time.
The Everyday Christian Podcast for him.
Oh my goodness. But yeah, love to, I know this is where it's going to be kind of awkward. I'll be honest with you. There's a couple reasons why, and you guys are going to probably laugh. I think we only have 1 viewer right now. It was up to like 10, but thank God it's down to 1. It's going to get really awkward because I got to figure out how to press the end button on my computer that's right over there without getting up and making it awkward for everybody else.
Too late. This is us signing off as we crowd the camera out. Thank you and God bless.
This is us signing off.
Crunch, crack, here it goes, all the noise. Don't swear yet.